In our previous video, we looked at supply-side approach to economics. And supply-side approach is really about cutting the costs to the business. When we look at supply-side economics being applied by political parties, the focus is often on business taxes, cutting the costs to businesses by taxing them less. And so we refer to supply-side economics sometimes as Reagan economics because President Reagan in the 1980s was really one of the first to really champion this supply-side approach. Well, this approach to reducing taxes is what has become popular today in the U.S. So as we look at political parties such as the Republicans under President Trump. Now, where did this all come from? Well, under Reagan, there was a gentleman named Arthur Laffer. And Arthur Laffer was a member of Reagan's Economic Policy Advisory Board. And Laffer was having a conversation. Oh, you can't see what I wrote because I'm writing on top of my face. Arthur Laffer and Reagan, a number of people were sitting down over dinner. And Laffer was explaining the role of taxes on government revenue. And so on a napkin, Laffer drew the following curve. So what he said is that you can look at the different tax rates. Okay, so we could have tax rates 5%, 50%. When you tax businesses and individuals, according to Laffer, at low levels of taxes, what happens is that if you put a low-level tax on businesses, then businesses will have more money. And what they will do is they'll put that money into the business. So they'll grow their operations and output will increase. They'll produce more goods, they'll make more money. And if they make more money, then even though they're paying a lower tax rate, the dollar value of what they're paying to the government will be bigger. So at low tax rates, according to Laffer, the revenue to the government, actually, let's just rewrite this here. The amount of money that goes to the government will actually increase. Same thing for households. If you have a low income tax, then people will get to keep more of their money, which means they will then go out and spend it. And that will help grow the economy. And what we'll get is we'll get more being paid dollar-wise in terms of income tax, sales tax, and so on. So Laffer said if you have a low tax rate, the amount of money coming into the government will actually be more because it'll stimulate more growth, and then that will mean more dollar value revenue. According to Laffer, if you raise the tax rate too high, then it creates a disincentive for people to work. So if we put a high income tax, then what's the point in working and getting a wage? If all my money is going to go back to the government, I might as well stay home. In which case, that high income tax is going to deter me from working, and then I'm going to pay no income tax because I'm not going to work. Same thing in the approach with businesses. He's saying if you charge too high of taxes on businesses, then what happens is businesses, there's no incentive to grow, to expand, there's no incentive to be in operation. If most of your profit is going to the government, why would you be in business? And so what's going to happen is you're not going to be in business or you're not going to grow. And so the amount you're going to pay to the government in terms of taxes on your profits, sales taxes, things like that will be less. So Laffer says there's this optimum level of tax rates that will encourage economic growth and will maximize the amount of money coming into the government. So when you look at economic policy under Reagan, the idea was lower the taxes for everyone to spur economic growth. And we see the same approach under Trump, right? We've seen significant tax cuts primarily to businesses. And when asked how the government will continue to operate and why this won't create huge amounts of debt and deficit, the argument from politicians has been, well, it's going to create economic growth, so then it will essentially pay for itself. The challenge with the Laffer curve is that it was a theoretical discussion on a paper napkin. There is no evidence, we don't know what tax rate, that optimal tax rate, in order to maximize government revenue, in order to encourage that economic growth. In fact, the Economic Recovery Tax Act that Reagan implemented in 1981, it actually resulted in a decrease in government revenue by about 13% over the following 4 years. Now, advocates for the Laffer curve, that's what this is here, and this approach to supply-side economics have said, well, the problem has been is the tax cuts have not been enough. That really we're still over here. You got to cut the taxes even more to see the impact that Laffer was talking about. Now, George H.W. Bush, who followed Ronald Reagan as president of the United States, used to refer to this as voodoo economics. And in fact, there's a link to a video from Ferris Bueller's Day Off where you see the economics instructor talking about Reaganomics and voodoo economics. So why did President Bush call this voodoo economics? Well, because of that argument that the government can spend more, tax less, and still not grow the debt. And we did see under Reagan a huge increase in the government debt. So when they talk about voodoo economics, they're talking about unrealistic policies. This idea that we can tax less, spend more, get the economy to grow, but at the same time not add to the debt. Is that really realistic? Well, under Trump, Arthur Laffer received the Medal of Freedom. And so we do see political parties today identify with the Laffer curve and the fact that if they lower the tax rate, it'll spur that economic growth without adding to the debt. Now, if you're looking to get a master's or a PhD in economics, it's a great research topic because it has yet to be resolved as to whether or not there is a key tax rate. What is that optimal amount for businesses, for households, that will encourage enough growth to offset the decrease in revenue from less taxes by increasing the dollar value. So we can see in terms of conservative political parties today an approach to supply side. There is a heavy emphasis here on reducing that tax rate. And it really ties back to Arthur Laffer and this Laffer curve, that if we just lower the tax rate enough, we can spend more, we can tax less, we'll get economic growth without contributing to the debt.